This is the 86 Podcast, where we're talking everything hospitality with your host, Richard White. All right, let's get started. Well, here we are, the 86 Podcast with your host, me, Richard White. Season 2, Episode 3 is happening today. Please don't forget to like the episode and subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date with everything going on with the 86 Podcast. Well, today everything is made in Canada because, well, that's just everything in the news today, isn't it? I swear to God, if I see another ad saying, proudly Canadian, please support our economy, please support Canadian products, I'm going to be even happier because it is simply amazing. But what is made in Canada and what's product of Canada? Because they're two different things. And although at the end of the day, does it really matter if you're supporting Canada and supporting local? Probably not. But, let's just get the facts out there so that you know what you're talking about when people are talking to you and when you're trying to find the products for your business. So product of Canada is pretty easy. Made in Canada is pretty easy. Made in Canada is 51% of the goods need to be Canadian. For food products, it's labeled made in Canada with a qualifying statement means that the last substantial transformation of the product occurred in Canada, even if some ingredients are from outside the country. And I think this is a lot of things because a lot of our food ingredients, we import a lot of stuff, whether it's, beef or grains or oils or whatever from other countries, not necessarily from the US, but other countries. Whereas product of Canada is even easier, I guess. This is 98% of everything to do with that product is, in fact, from Canada. So either way, it's still a win-win situation. But it brings up this very interesting conundrum when it comes to these types of things. Because if you look at French's mustard, for example, now we're all buying French's ketchup because of what happened in Peely. We've talked about this before, where this story is true, but also not true about Heinz and where their products are made for the Canadian market. In my previous podcast, go back and take a listen for a little update, or I'll wait. I'm kidding. I'm not going to wait. French's mustard, for example, is made in America, prepared in America from Canadian mustard seeds. Now, Canada, I think, is one of the largest producers of mustard. It's actually a pretty cool thing, and we ship it globally. So a lot of the nations around the globe use our mustard, and some of it is prepared in the United States and then shipped back. It's like our cars. A lot of cars are made from parts that are made in Canada and assembled abroad and then shipped back in, and vice versa too. There's a lot of American parts being sent up to Canada for final assembly too. So we don't really want to, boycott absolutely everything. We want to make sure that we're protecting our economy. But it does leave a lot of gray areas out there, and it leaves a lot of brands struggling to figure out, how do I get the information about my brand out there? How do I get the information about my company out there? And there's a clothing company in Canada that's come up with the answer, and it's called madewellincanada.com. Why not a .ca, folks? Not that I'm chirping you, but I'm chirping you. madewellincanada.com. Interesting site. So their site says, and this is a great little quote. Listen to this. We are thrown into a crazy situation this month. Our domestic producers, which more than often are not selling a significant chunk of their products via DTC, which means direct to consumer, and wholesale to the US market, were targeted with aggressive tariffs. These have been temporarily paused, clappy, 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 but our national wake-up call hasn't been missed. We, as Canadians, weren't really clear on the brands truly owned and made in Canada. Their site goes on to say, we know that asking Canadians to shop local doesn't fix political issues, but we hope that it helps us close some of the gap. Supporting domestic production, opening up opportunities and economic growth for Canadian brands and manufacturing and communities, and working towards positive and collaborative solutions for the future with our trading partners. That's a long sentence. They go on to say, we are asking brand owners to self-declare so they can populate what percentage of their production is made in Canada, what percentage of their ownership is held in Canada. This way, Canadian shoppers can sort of make out their own decisions while being fully informed. They go on to say, we bleed maple syrup, we shop domestic. And listen, I really like this initiative. And there's a lot of really cool initiatives coming out of Canada to say, hey, listen, you know what? There is a gap here. Canadians blissfully go about their business and not really care so much about where their products are made, unless you're dedicated to shopping local and shopping small brands, which some people are, and good for you. But this really this new economic crisis we're having with the Americans is leading Canada to be so much more patriotic than we ever thought we'd need to be. And here we are bleeding maple syrup and buying domestic. So on their site, they're asking brands and companies to submit their brands to be designated in such a way, and however they're going to get this stuff out there. So under the submit your brand, they're asking, like, are you 25% or more Canadian owned? Are 25% or more of your products made in Canada? We are the first and only for good, not for profit directory. I like that. For good, not for profit. I like that. For good. It's cheeky. We are the first and only for good, not for profit directory of truly Canadian owned and Canadian made brands. And we want to get you discovered, supported, and shopped by Canadian consumers, retailers, and the media. Well, of course, the media picking up this is great. I don't know if I classify myself as the media, but I'm definitely part of that world and glad to be sharing this news. Why do we ask to self-declare your Canadian status? Because it's our goal to create a truly transparent directory of Canadian made and owned brands. Your brand is welcome to be listed here if the following is true. And they go on with 3 criteria. One, you create consumer goods in Canada. That was a hard thing to say for me. I don't know. I'm not a broadcaster, people. I'm not a broadcaster. Your brand is at least 25% Canadian owned, and your brand creates at least 25% of its SKU portfolio in Canada. That's an interesting concept because there are a lot of Canadian businesses and a lot of Canadian brands that do most of their business elsewhere. And I guess they're trying to, focus on Canadians that focus on Canada. And if the brand is at least 25% Canadian owned, because that's also a funny thing where you have companies that are maybe owned by hedge funds, equity funds, these type of situations, and that have ownership either in the US or global or managed elsewhere or whatever. So there's a lot of muddiness in who owns these companies that we buy from, even though they may manufacture here, but are they a US subsidiary or whatever? McDonald's is a good example of this. While McDonald's is, global McDonald's Canada is actually its own entity. It's its own business. Everything's different. If you've ever driven to the United States and ordered a McDonald's coffee, you've been disappointed and said, what happened? Where's the good coffee? I guess the Americans don't put as much emphasis in their McDonald's coffee as Canadians do. So anyways, I digress. McDonald's, although, an American brand, American ownership of the main corporation, McDonald's Canada is, it's Canadian, right? Head office in Toronto, right off the DVP. So if you're stuck in traffic, you can see the McCafe building while you're sitting there staring at the bumper in front of you. But let's take a second here, take a break. I have an ad to read because we got to pay the bills. And this ad comes compliments of, and this is apt today. I like this one. A, because it's in my neighborhood. And B, because it's Canadian. Reinhart Foods. Reinhart Foods is a Canadian family-owned food manufacturer dating back to 1898. We are Canada's largest vinegar manufacturer, producing white vinegar and specialty vinegars, as well as a leading manufacturer of maraschino cherries, glace fruit, dates, and hard cider. Our Allen's vinegars are made in our Ontario and Quebec facility from Canadian and imported ingredients. We offer all leading format sizes, from large 5-liter bottles to attractive 500 milliliter restaurant tabletop with flip caps. We are proud to be part of your essential ingredient in salad dressings, marinades, and sauces. For more information on sales support, please reach out to Freeman Signature at info@freemancan.com. Why do I like Reinhart Foods? Well, because there's a Reinhart factory, I guess, production facility in Stayner, Ontario, which is right around the corner from where I'm streaming this, which is from Wasaga Beach, Ontario. Beautiful and sunny Wasaga Beach today. You can't see it, but I can see out the window there, and the sun is shining and melting some of that snow. One of the other Canadian innovations that I have really loved during this little spat with the US is again on the technology front. This group from Calgary has made an app for your phone that you can download, and it uses AI to determine by scanning the barcode if that product is in fact made in Canada or not. Self-top app designers Ryan and Kathy Chikora, hopefully I did not wreck your name, released their AI-powered app called Oh Scanada. I love that. On the App Store on February 3rd. They did it to help shoppers identify products that are or not Canadian made. Kathy goes on to say, really, it came to me quite suddenly when I woke up one morning thinking about the news and, the desire for people to buy Canadian. With the free app, I like the free part of that. With the free app, shoppers can search their products in two ways, either by typing the name into the search bar or by scanning the barcode. The app will then tell shoppers who makes the product and where it is made and where it is sold. Well, if you're standing in the grocery store scanning that bottle of ketchup, you'll know exactly where it's sold. AI will essentially get that info from the scan barcode to help you out with that. Essentially, this product is Canadian and manufactured in Canadian, goes on to say Ryan. But that leads us to the next thing. You know what? I really want to comment on this first before I move on. There are a lot of brilliant Canadian technology startups. 86 is one of them, and you'll see a lot more from 86 as we move forward. We're not just a podcast. There's an app for that, and I can't wait to share that with you down the road. And it's certainly going to, while it does address a lot of what we're talking about in the news these days about our products and stuff like that, but it really gets a little bit deeper into that, helping restaurants make ingredient choices that make them truly amazing. We'll get to that later. But I think that there are a lot of great Canadian startups that don't get funded because they're not doing either self-driving cars or biomedical technology and stuff like that. When you go and we're looking for funds through investors or VCs, angels, friends, families, and fools, anyone who will give us funding. Food service industry isn't as seductive as you think, which is weird because our industry, food service alone, I'm not even talking about retail where this Scanada app is going after, is $93 billion a year. This is a big industry. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year marketing our food products into the industry in hopes that they get picked up by your favorite restaurant. And it's difficult and it's hard to navigate. And that's why 86 is taking this on. But there's nobody lining up, trying to throw money our way and say, hey, man, shut up and take my money. What you're going to do is transform the industry because it's just not as sexy as it should be. So anyways, buying Canadian, supporting local, all this sort of stuff. I love it. I love how patriotic we've become as a nation. I truly do. There are, like any population, there are going to be those out there who say, well, like I would rather be an American. I'd rather be the 51st state. And that's fair enough. There are people out there who simply just don't care. You might not know it by the sound of my voice or by what you're looking at on the screen if you're unfortunate enough to see my face. I don't look like an immigrant, but I actually am. And people of my age that are immigrants to this country came here when we were very young. So I've grown up in Canada. You can hear my dog. I've grown up in Canada, and although I wasn't a citizen until recently, I consider myself Canadian through and through and through. Always have. My British heritage is nice to have, I suppose, but I've never really remembered living in England, although it's a great place to visit. All my family's here in Canada. Except for one, sorry, Darren, my older brother, he actually does live in the United States. But we won't hold that against him. But being part of Canadian and being patriotic as I am and as I feel, I'm very proud to see this movement of supporting Canadian things. But I want to caution us, because it's not so easy. As I started this episode out talking about the difference between made in Canada and product of Canada, and although that doesn't really matter, but we want to make sure that we're being somewhat responsible, logical, or careful when we're making our buying decisions. I went to the grocery store this morning, and yeah, I spent a few extra minutes reading labels. No, I didn't have my reading glasses. Yes, that was a pain in the butt. No, I did not use my iPhone magnifier. Yes, I lie. But I don't want us to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Um, if you haven't heard that term before, that's okay. It's an expression for an avoidable error in which something good or a value is eliminated when trying to get rid of something unwanted. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's an idiom, and it derives from a German proverb. Das kind mit dem beiden Schuten. No, I do not speak German. The earliest recordings of the phrase go back to 1512 in Appeal to Fools by Thomas Murner. Great, great idiom. Don't throw the baby with the bathwater. So as much as we're trying very hard to buy and support Canadian products, even some American-made things that we're desperately trying to avoid actually help our economy. You can think of this in produce, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of trucking, repackaging, chopping, processing, the guy who sold it to you and the delivery truck that brought it from the distributor, you know what I mean? Those are all Canadian jobs, the advertising behind it, the cell phone provider of the guy, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of an economy built in around buying and selling US products, buying and selling products globally. Our Canada buys a lot of stuff from around the world. Yeah, we buy a lot from the United States because of, well, geography. We're surrounded on three sides by the US, if you consider Alaska aside, whatever. We're surrounded by America, so it's easy for us to buy American. But we have a lot of people who live in this country that are immigrants like myself from other places like, UK or Europe and beyond. And they want their products here. So they start companies and they start importing stuff from all around the world. More and more these days, when you go to the grocery store, you're seeing really cool stuff from overseas, which is awesome. And so I want to make sure that we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And that is by saying, let's not kill Canadian jobs for the sake of hurting Americans. And not we're trying to hurt Americans. We're trying to hurt American profits to the big companies so that those CEOs line up at the Oval Office, and I hope they're wearing suits, line up at the Oval Office to tell the Commander-in-Chief, the United States President, Donald Trump, to stop it, to lay off. Canadians are upset, And what are we upset about? What are we upset? Are we upset about the tariffs? I don't know if I'm upset about the tariffs because I really don't care. I think the tariffs are, an illogical way of the U.S. taxing its citizens through deceptive practices like a tariff, essentially gaslighting them into think that Canada and Mexico are going to pay these tariffs into the U.S. economy. It's actually the U.S. consumer that pays these tariffs. But either way, I don't necessarily think that that's the issue. The issue is it's the 51st state thing, in my opinion. I think that this is what people are really upset about. I don't think people want to be an American state. I think that people like being Canadian, like being from Canada, and they like the Canadian culture to remain the way it is. As much as we love American TV and Big Macs, at the end of the day, the identity and the values and the things that make us Canadian are very different from the values and identity that makes an American American. So although we're close, we're not the same, and that's something to be celebrated. I think it would be extremely crazy for it to happen. Like some of my friends and family, especially in the US, say, Richard, your fear of becoming the 51st state of Donald Trump invading Canada that's pretty crazy. And you're right. It's an extremely crazy thought to think that America would destabilize Canada in a way to get us to concede part of Canada as the 51st state. We know that he wants the North, right? So, does he want a prime minister in office that would say, fine, I'll give you the territories if you give me, free access to the US economy? I think that's what he's trying to do. As crazy as all that just sounded, And as much eye rolling as you just did, would it be, honestly, would it be the most craziest thing you've seen come out of the White House? And the answer to that is no. It's not crazy. It isn't crazy. What America is willing to do right now is endlessly crazy, and we need to be prepared for it. And that's why we're shopping local. And I'm so proud of you all for shopping local and sharing your local stories. I just in researching for this episode alone came across a ton of stuff. If you Google, oh shoot, is there a Canadian search? We should think about that for a second. When you Google "Made in Canada" stories, it's essentially what I Googled to find out some of my information today. Came across a lot of places who have, Canadian made stories in their website. So they kind of popped up. A lot of clothing brands that you wouldn't think of are actually, either designed or made or whatever in Canada. And as much as the governor of Texas might like to think that he's going to tariff cotton to Ontario, I still don't think that that's going to kill our garment industry up here. But what about restaurant owners? Like, what can we do? You know what I mean? To do this, we order, in a very different way than consumers buy food. Consumers go into a store and they pick things off the shelf. Where we as restaurants are, well, we're looking at a computer screen sometimes, or on the phone more often than not, with our sales rep, or if our sales rep is standing in front of us with their laptop taking our order, and we say things like, "Send me the canned tomatoes I like." Sometimes we remember the brands. Sometimes we're religious to that brand, and regardless of where it's made, they're going to buy it, or they see value in it, or it's just working for their flavor profiles. So it's difficult because we don't see "Made in Canada." We don't see the little Canada flag on stuff. Or do we? Because I'll tell you, as somebody who makes products for the food industry, for restaurants, all of my distributors and a lot of the buying groups and GPOs and all that are out there are asking me to respond into their database, putting the little marker on there to say, is this, made in Canada? Is this product of Canada? Like, where are you getting your ingredients from? So that they can, on their online ordering systems at least, showcase Canadian products. I would hope they're going to do some marketing behind this with all the money that they take from us to run these GPOs and these distributors. Hopefully there's a lot of visuals for those of us who actually make Canadian products in Canada. So I think that that's a really good thing, and that's coming a long way. But restaurants, to be unique, it's about those ingredients, and it's about those products and services that make our guests keep coming back for more. So would we tempt fate by changing that bacon or that pepperoni or that can of tomatoes? Or where'd you get that mayonnaise from? Was it made by Ventura Foods in the United States? You know what I mean? Like, where do we draw the line, and where do we pick up the spot? Because like I said, while some things might be made in the United States, there's an awful lot of supply chain marketing and distribution and stuff like that that's Canadian behind it. So I think we just do the best we can. And the best we can is to be very thoughtful into what we're doing, understanding that you can't get it all. We can't completely shut out all the American brands, but we can fiercely support our Canadian distributors. Even the distributors, some of the big ones that are a head office in the United States, they have tremendous assets in Canada and create a lot of jobs here. That order taker, that order selector, that truck driver, that's a lot of jobs out there keeping the lights on. So let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Again, guys, like and subscribe if you'd like to keep up to date with what's going on in Canada's food service industry with me, Richard White from 86 Podcast. Like and subscribe. Next episode is going to be fun. We're going to talk about careers in the food service industry. So let's keep that ready to go. And again, thanks for listening to the 86 Podcast. Next episode is coming again, brought to you by, of course, Freeman Signature Canada. These guys are great. They have their own in-house Canadian-made CRM that allows them to connect with restaurants of Canada, across Canada, and represent your brands well. Until next time, it's Richard White. Take care.